I never thought saying no to a billionaire would lead to this much drama. He had power, private jets, and promises. But I wanted peace, not a price tag. Now he's showing up in places I go begging for my love. Here's how it all started, and why I walked away. If you've ever doubted your worth or felt tempted to settle for flashy love, this story is for you. Stick with me to the end. You might just find your own power in my choices. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe love should feel like freedom, not pressure. I'm a Black woman in my early 30s, born and raised with the kind of love that teaches you to know your worth before the world tries to define it for you. I'm not famous, not flashy, and definitely not someone you'd expect to be the center of a billionaire's obsession. I'm a creative. I write, design, build stories that move people. I've always loved beauty, not in the glamorous sense, but in the quiet ways it shows up, in words, in colors, in honest conversations. I've worked hard to build a life that feels like mine. No shortcuts, no pretending, just truth. So when he, this billionaire with power, a name that people whisper, and a life that lives in headlines, stepped into my world, it wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't even interest. It was confusion. Why me? Why now? But I stayed grounded. I smiled politely. I didn't fall for the charm or the wealth. I kept my pace. That's what caught him off guard, I think. That I didn't chase him back. And maybe that's why he's now chasing me, loudly, publicly, dramatically. But this isn't a fairy tale. It's a lesson. One that begins with knowing who you are before anyone else tries to tell you. It was a Thursday night, one of those evenings where I almost didn't go out. I had just wrapped up a long week working on a design project, and honestly, I was exhausted. But my best friend had invited me to this local art and culture mixer. Nothing fancy, just creatives sharing space, sipping wine, and vibing to low-key jazz. I threw on something simple: jeans, a fitted blazer, hoops, and a red lip, just enough to feel like myself. When I got there, it was calm, small gallery space, local artists showing off their work, no velvet ropes, no VIP nonsense, just energy that felt real. I was walking around, reading a poem someone had painted on canvas, when I felt a shift in the room. You know that feeling when someone powerful walks in? Not loud, not obnoxious, just energy. Eyes turned toward the door. And there he was. I recognized him immediately. Not because I followed him, but because you can't really avoid the kind of press billionaires get. Tall, polished, confident. He had two people with him, but somehow still looked alone. Out of place, even. He walked the room slowly, scanning, not smiling much. And then our eyes met. I nodded politely, the way you do when a stranger looks at you too long. He smiled, walked up, and said, "You don't look impressed." I just shrugged and said, "Should I be?" That made him laugh. A real laugh. Not performance. And in that moment, something shifted. Not in a romantic way, more like a quiet click. Two worlds brushing shoulders for the first time. We talked briefly about the art, about how rare it is to find authenticity in crowded rooms. That was the beginning. No sparks, no fairy dust, just curiosity. After that night at the gallery, I didn't expect to hear from him again. But the next day, I got a message through someone at the event. He'd asked for my contact info. I hesitated. My gut told me to be cautious, but curiosity nudged me forward. We met for coffee. No cameras, no flashy car. He showed up in a hoodie and jeans, just a guy trying to blend in. He was quieter than I expected, more observant than talkative. He asked questions about my work, about why I chose creativity over stability, about the things that made me feel alive. It wasn't small talk. He actually listened. That caught me off guard. What struck me most wasn't his money or his status. It was how lonely he seemed. He told me that people always assume he has everything, but no one really asks what he needs. He said with me he felt Normal. I wasn't swooning. I was still skeptical. Was this genuine? Or just another rich man romanticizing a woman with her own path? But there was something there. A softness. A quietness. And I'll be honest, I liked talking to him. Our conversations became a regular thing. We'd meet at bookstores, walk through parks, send each other voice notes about the little things, poems, songs, moments in our day. It felt personal, intimate even, but not possessive. Not yet. And still, I never forgot the difference between his world and mine. I kept one foot planted in reality. I wasn't looking for a savior. I was just letting something unfamiliar unfold, on my terms. I think that's what drew him in even more. I wasn't dazzled. I wasn't impressed. I was me. And that, apparently, was rare in his world. Condition. No shows, no media, no scenes. Just two people getting to know each other. He smiled and said, "Deal." Our first official date. A rooftop dinner he had quietly reserved. Candles, soft jazz, and no one else around. It was beautiful, yes, but also intense. I remember thinking, he doesn't do anything halfway. As we kept seeing each other, the gifts started. A rare book, he said, reminded him of me. A sketchbook made by a local artisan. Then came the designer bag, the expensive shoes, the watch I'd never wear. I thanked him, but reminded him that I didn't need things. I needed connection. He'd nod, say he understood, but the gifts kept coming. We traveled a bit, quick getaways on his jet, luxury resorts with staff that already knew my name. It was overwhelming, beautiful, but not real. I kept one foot out the door emotionally. I told him, "Don't mistake me being present for being sold." He'd tell me he admired my independence, how I wasn't swayed by all of this. But sometimes I could feel the tension in him, like he couldn't figure out why I wasn't melting into his lifestyle the way others did. Like he wanted me to be more grateful, or maybe just more available. There were sweet moments too, quiet mornings, thoughtful conversations, the way he'd look at me like I was his piece in a storm. But there was always a shadow underneath it, like I was being studied, like I was being measured, and I realized he loved how I made him feel. But I wasn't sure he truly saw me. Not the woman behind the calm. Not yet. It was a warm evening, the kind where the sky turns soft orange and everything feels slow and golden. He told me to dress up but didn't say where we were going. I wasn't suspicious. It wasn't the first time he'd planned something elaborate, but this felt different. When we arrived, I realized he had rented out an entire rooftop restaurant. Soft lights, string quartet, petals everywhere. It was straight out of a movie. A few people I recognized were there. His assistant, a photographer, someone from the press. That's when my stomach started to tighten. We walked to the center of the space. The music changed, and right there, in front of everyone, he dropped to one knee. I froze. He started talking about how I was unlike anyone he'd ever met, how he wanted to build a life with me, how he admired my strength. The words were beautiful, but they didn't land. Not because I didn't care about him, but because it didn't feel private. It didn't feel sacred. It felt orchestrated. People around us pulled out phones. I could hear camera shutters, and I just stood there, blinking, heart racing, wanting to disappear. I looked down at him, this man with power, wealth, influence, offering me the world in a diamond-studded box. And all I could think was, he still doesn't see me. He saw the version of me that smiled politely, that moved gracefully through his world without asking for anything. But not the full me. Not the woman with doubts, boundaries, messy dreams. And in that moment, I knew my answer. Not because I didn't love him in my own way, but because I wasn't willing to lose myself just to be loved publicly. So I whispered, gently but clearly, "I can't say yes." Walking away from that rooftop wasn't easy. My legs were shaking, and my heart was pounding in my chest. The air felt heavier with every step I took. People were watching, whispering. He didn't chase me. He just stood there, still holding the ring. I didn't say no because I didn't care. I said no because I do care. About myself, about my peace, about the kind of love I let into my life. There's a moment every woman reaches where she has to ask herself, is this love or is this pressure? And for me, that moment was loud and clear. He loved my strength, but I don't think he understood that strength comes with boundaries. I think he fell in love with the idea of me, the grounded woman, the calm energy, the one who didn't flinch at luxury. But love isn't built on ideas, it's built on truth. And the truth was, I didn't feel free in his world. I felt watched, expected to perform a version of myself that fit neatly into his lifestyle. Polished, quiet, soft but never too loud, never too real. He talked often about taking care of me, but I already take care of myself. I wanted partnership, not possession, support, not surveillance. And deep down, I think he believed the proposal would be the grand gesture that sealed the deal, that the romance of it all would make me forget the quiet warnings in my gut. But I couldn't ignore that voice inside me, the one that said, "This is beautiful, but it's not love that sees you fully." So I said no, not because I was ungrateful, not because I didn't feel something, but because I loved myself too much to say yes to something that didn't feel right. After I said no, I thought things would quiet down. I imagined he'd go back to his world, I'd return to mine, and that would be it. But I underestimated how loud rejection echoes, especially when power and pride are involved. Within 48 hours, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News outlets picked up the story. Mysterious woman turns down billionaire's proposal. They didn't know my name, but that didn't stop the headlines. I was suddenly the girl who said no. Some called me brave, others called me foolish. People online debated my worth like I was a trending topic. My DMs were a mess. Some women thanked me for showing what self-respect looks like. Others questioned why I wouldn't secure the bag. Strangers gave opinions on a love they never witnessed, a moment they didn't live through. And then came his response. He didn't hide. Instead, he leaned into the chaos. Public statements, soft interviews, subtle posts that hinted at heartbreak. He didn't mention my name, but the message was clear. He wanted me back. He sent flowers, gifts, notes handwritten in his almost perfect penmanship. And when I didn't respond, he started showing up. At events he knew I'd be attending, in cities I traveled to for work. Always respectful, always coincidental. But I knew better. It was surreal, watching someone who once seemed untouchable, now trying so hard to touch my heart again. But it wasn't romantic to me. It was unsettling, because even in his regret, I could see it. He still wanted me on his terms. And I was done shrinking myself to fit someone else's idea of a dream. The real story wasn't about him losing me. It was about me finding the courage to choose myself. The more silent I stayed, the louder he got. He started popping up at places I loved. A small poetry night I hosted once a month. He showed up, sat in the back, alone. Didn't say a word to me, just clapped a little too long when I read my piece. The next week, he donated a huge amount to the community art center that ran the space. Quiet moves, but very visible. Then there were the interviews. He never said my name, but he'd drop lines like, "The one who got away taught me more about love than anyone ever has." Or, "Money can't buy presents. It can't replace emotional safety." Suddenly, people online were romanticizing the story, turning our very real breakup into a fantasy comeback. Get Her Back started trending for a day. One night, he even posted a photo of a book I'd once recommended, with the caption, "Trying to understand her silence." That one hit hard, not because it was sweet, but because it showed me how well he knew how to perform vulnerability. For the public. Friends started asking if I'd consider giving him another chance. Some even said, "At least he's trying." And yeah, he was trying, just not in the way that mattered. He was fighting for the idea of me, the image, the one who made him feel grounded and inspired. But he wasn't doing the real work. He still hadn't sat with why I walked away. He was loud about his loss, but quiet about the lessons. And me? I stayed still. I watched. I listened. I kept building my life in peace. Because if someone really wants to be in your life, they won't just chase you in public. They'll do the inner work in private. Looking back, I don't hate him. I don't even really resent him. I think he meant well, at least in his own way. But love is complicated, and sometimes good intentions aren't enough. What I've learned is that love isn't about grand gestures or public declarations. It's about respect, honesty, and most importantly, seeing the person you love, really seeing them, without trying to change or control them. He loved the idea of me, the calm, strong woman who didn't bend to his world, but he struggled to love the messy parts, the doubts, the boundaries, the parts of me that aren't perfect or glamorous. I realize now that when I said no, I wasn't just refusing a ring or a lifestyle. I was choosing freedom, freedom to be my whole self without apology, freedom to grow and change on my own terms, freedom to love without losing myself. I'm proud of that. Proud that I trusted my voice, even when it felt small against his roar. Proud that I didn't let pressure or expectation make my choice for me. And honestly, I'm grateful, because if I had said yes, I might have lost something much bigger than a relationship. I might have lost myself. Sometimes the hardest love story is the one where you walk away. But in walking away, I found my power. I found my peace. I found me. And that's a love story worth telling. This whole experience taught me more than I ever expected about love, strength, and self-respect. First, I learned that love should never feel like a transaction or a performance. It shouldn't come with conditions or expectations that make you shrink. Real love sees you, your whole story, your flaws, your dreams, and still chooses you again and again. Second, I learned the importance of boundaries. Saying no isn't rejection, it's protection. Protecting your heart, your time, your peace. When you set clear boundaries, you create space for love that's healthy and honest. Third, I learned that your worth isn't defined by anyone else's approval or the size of their bank account. It's inside you, quiet, steady, and unshakable. You don't need a fancy proposal or public displays to prove you're valuable. Fourth, I realized that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. It takes courage to refuse a perfect life if it doesn't feel right. But choosing yourself first opens the door to the kind of happiness that lasts. Finally, I learned that being a Black woman in this world means carrying a history of strength and resilience. It means knowing that your voice matters and your story deserves to be heard, not just as a headline, but as truth. So, to anyone watching who feels pressured to settle or stay silent, remember this: you are the prize. Your peace is your power, and your love should never cost you your freedom. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe in love that lifts you up instead of holding you down, hit that like button and follow for more stories that celebrate real strength and real freedom. You deserve that love. Always. If you've ever had to walk away from something everyone else wanted for you, drop a heart in the comments. You're not alone. Follow for more true stories of self-worth, growth, and choosing peace over pressure. Remember, you are the prize. Always.